Do you remember what your hands can do? Grab a needle and thread, and let's sew together.
A very simple but strong seam is to do a small running stitch with an occasional back stitch to lock it into place. To begin, you're going to work right to left if you're right-handed and left to right if you're left-handed. Draw a line on your fabric so that you've got a nice line to go off of and it's easy to follow. To start, just dip the needle into the fabric like you were doing a basting stitch, but instead of doing a larger stitch, I would dip into the fabric and then come back out again about a 1/16 or about a millimeter away from where you put that needle in. So it's going to be a very tiny little bite. And then push that through. And we're going to then dip the needle down to the fabric and kind of rock it back up, dip it down, and rock it back up about 3 or 4 times. You can do it all in one, or you can do it in separate motions. And I'm going to do that a couple more times. And then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go back to the stitch that I just did. And then I'm going to progress forward about a stitch width away from the tail, push this through, and then that's going to lock that in place. So it's going to be an odd looking seam. You're going to have even running stitches and then the occasional kind of 2-stitch touching, and then you're going to progress from there. Again, this is something that's, you want to do still small stitches. So you're looking at 8 to 10 stitches to the inch. And this is something I see on historical seams that are used for felling. So for example, on shifts, historical shifts, I've seen the stitch seamed with a tiny running stitch and the occasional back stitch, and then they fell over the raw edge. I've also seen this, a larger version of the stitch done on silk clothing. So for example, the long seams on a silk gown would be done with a running stitch with the occasional back stitch at, say, like 5 to 6 stitches to the inch, or 5 to 6 stitches per 2.5 centimeters. So the size of this is going to be dictated by the type of fabric that you're working on and the project that you're working on. But if you can only do a running stitch and kind of manage that little back stitch, this is a perfect beginner seam for you. To knot off, I'm going to do a little back stitch, push my needle perpendicular to the fabric, pull this up, and then I'm going to take a little bit of a bite in between the thread and the work. I'm going to put the thread through that loop twice. And now you've got a knot. And now I'm going to actually then put the needle in between the thread and the work, going back towards the work itself, just to lock that tail in place. I'm going to snip it, and there we have it. So this is the underside, and then this is the quote-unquote right side of the work. Let me know what you think in the comments. Happy sewing!